Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our budget work session this evening. We'll go with this until our actual regular meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael and his staff.
Happy to walk you through the 2023 proposed budget for the first time. Aaron Vasilati, our finance director, has prepared a presentation that will take you primarily through the first two sections of the budget document, the budget message and the executive summary, which is kind of a snapshot of the budget at large. So with that, I will let Aaron kick it off. No, I won't. Okay, I forgot. I do have a few slides here that I'm going to go through. So as with any municipal budget, we of course want to base it on our priorities. We try and do a programmatic sort of modified zero-based budget whenever we can, instead of just adding to everyone's budget. We want to make sure we're moving the ball forward, making advances on what all is important to you as a council, of course, our residents in the community, and things we hear as staff. So we've been through many of these things in the past few weeks. We were here a couple of weeks ago talking about these things. What is council prioritizing this year? We've heard each of these items here: staff compensation, retire the debt, replace aging vehicles, consider ways to support signature events. And then we also heard some late additions of improved medians and add a lit crosswalk or some kind of solution like that on Highway 24. We have done all those things with this budget. I'm happy to share. So going to just the more general priority areas that we've been talking about through the middle part of 2022, starting in May up through today. These are just more programmatically what your priority areas are. And we've addressed each of these to differing degrees, also the 2023 budget. Am I still there, still me? Are these me or you? You. Still me, okay. Okay, anything that says budget message. Can you tell we practiced for weeks on this? Going into the priority areas a little bit more. Last year, we shared with you in the budget what the turnover rate was. I think it was actually 36% at this same time last year through 3/4 of the year. Fortunately, this year, we are seeing greater turnover so far. Much of that has come in the third quarter, July and September, as I recall, looking at the numbers for whatever reason. Throughout each month of the year, we look at vacancy rates. On average, that has looked like 17% of our roughly 100 FTE have been vacant at one time. When looking at CPI, another metric that we started looking at last year when considering inflation, for the metro area that we've most closest, would lie to most closest, that's the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood area. CPI is looked at 7.7% over the past 12 months. That's a little bit lower than nationwide. I think nationwide it was 8.2%. So we're a little ahead of the curve there. It is slowing down inflation for this area, but it's still very high, obviously, and we all know quite a bit about that by now, I think. We talked about how can we better structure staff compensation. You all were clear about wanting not only a COLA, but also introducing a merit component to it, and we have done that. We've introduced a merit component. We all said, can you give us a dollar amount? And so we've narrowed it down to a dollar amount. General fund, that would be $203,684 in the general fund. For employees who are not on a probationary status and meet performance expectations at the end of this year, they have to make sure they don't have a below expectations and are meeting the goals we've set out for them in the year. There is a COLA mid-year for 2023 as well. So because it is mid-year, it is a lower dollar amount. So this is something that's gotten a lot of attention. We had set aside funds for several years to pay down the aquatic center debt. The suggestion was made about a year ago. Well, hey, aren't we kind of closer to paying off Memorial Park? And indeed we were. And last year we set aside over $1 million And I think we ended the year last year about $1.95 million. We said we think we will have savings at the end of 2022 to cover the rest of the debt, just for 2.425 million. We do indeed expect that to be the case. So we have in here in this budget to pay off the maturity of the Memorial Park debt issuance. So we're very excited about that. That's one of the big headlining things we wanted to share with you and emphasize this year. That also frees up, of course, what would have been the debt service payment for 2023, $267,000. We did roll that money into our capital projects for deferred and preventive maintenance. We will tell you more about our brand new 5-year capital improvement program a little bit later. The other parts of the budget, kind of the changes for 2023, there's not a ton after those items we just mentioned to you. Continuing to restore funding, just kind of to keep the basic operations going, do some vehicle maintenance, vehicle replacement, replace some tools. We're adding to our building maintenance budget, $35,000. Everything is getting older and everything is getting more expensive. We do have 11 vehicles in here for replacement. 4 of those we had hoped to replace this year, but we're not able to do so just because of continued supply chain issues. We could not get our orders in, and it continues to be a very difficult, unstable thing to replace vehicles. So this would be the plan across all different departments. And then we have a number of different small ads, miscellaneous ads, if you will, for maintenance stuff. Also vehicle fuel. I think fuel we upped by 35,000 as well, right? Okay. One of the things we heard is an individual council from several of you. It started out as an individual suggestion. We got some consensus on how can the city support signature events. We have put $15,000. We have located it in the city council budget. We can put that elsewhere if you like, but there is $15,000 in there to support a truly signature event that meets the city's priorities. What are the city's priorities? We would propose talking about that. We would have a role for council, presumably, to approve distributions from what essentially amounts to a revolving grant fund that we would have each year. We've done something like this in the past in the Community Investment Fund. As I understand, this would be a slightly modified version of that. And we would start it out at that 15,000 number. And we heard medians and crosswalk improvements. We've located those in the Streets Improvement Fund that are known as 410 Fund. We will use existing appropriation in that fund for maintenance to do the median improvement. We expect that to run about $10,000 to $20,000 to kind of vacuum out and vacate everything that's there and to make it a little more hardened and to beautify it. We're kind of working through on what that might look like, but we'd like to hear more on your thoughts as well, because of course that came from council originally anyway. And then Kip and his team have put together an estimate for what it would cost to do a lit crosswalk, as I understand. Is that right, Kip? Is it flashing dealy? Okay. That's a technical term, flashing dealy. Flashing dealy. Yeah, you heard it here first. That's what it'll be called forever and ever. Flashing dealy. They're at was that?
Write that down.
Write it down.
$60,000.
Flashing dealy. Heck yeah. Highway 24 in Chester, there by the fly shop. And so we actually would like to do a few more of those. We thought it was a good enough idea that we might try and make some improvements. We had an unfortunate incident here outside the high school earlier this week where perhaps something similar may have avoided it, maybe not, but it kind of got us thinking, and we like that idea. So CDOT needs to approve that. I think we've had initial conversations, and we think we can make that happen. If I say anything weird or not true, please interrupt me, my team. None of the priority areas we've heard and talked about fairly extensively on September 1st. We did a whole work session dedicated to this concept of an economic development function coming back. There is in the lodging tax fund an economic development office. Won't get into it too much right now. We told you all about September. We have a few more slides later on in this presentation. That's 2 positions, one of them being filled in July of next year that would be funded through the lodging tax. And that accounts for 2 of, I think, the 3.5 FTE added through the total budget. So that is that one. And we've talked for several years about having a capital improvement program and a long-range financial plan. It's taken us a few years to get here. I recall that staff and my predecessor had put together in the 2019 to 2022 strategic plan. We want to have a CIP and a long-range financial plan. We finally have that for you. Much credit to Aaron and Kip for putting those things together. You will find those toward the end of your budget book. And the reason you have those things, obviously, is to be able to plan a little bit better, to understand how the decisions you make today impact the city down the road. You're going to see here an emphasis on deferred maintenance. The 5-year CIP plan really helps tell that story and put some concrete numbers to the things we need to address instead of just year by year. Okay, we need to rush and put out this fire. We need to rush and fix this thing, and next year rush to fix that thing. So we can be a little bit more proactive in looking forward. All right, you're good now. Yeah.
Now you can turn it over.
Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, so now I'm going to jump into the executive summary. Our general fund unrestricted fund balance reserve for 2022 rose to 30% before paying off the Memorial Park debt. After paying off the Memorial Park debt for 22, we project that the year end will be 21.1%. So it's still, it is higher than what we were originally expecting. So that is good if that is the choice that you decide to make. And then for 23, we have our general fund unrestricted fund balance reserve projected at 23.7% based on everything we built out. For revenues for 2022, our year-end projection is slightly under what we had originally projected at $110,000 less. We project that it will end the year at $13,700,000. And for our 23 revenue projection, we're projecting it to be $14,368,000, which is a $553,000 increase over 2022. Part of that is a 3% increase in sales tax. And I would also like to point out that this is a non-reassessment year for property tax that will be in 2024 that we will see that. Other notable changes to the general fund revenue. We have an increase from the lodging tax transfer, $163,000, which will be used for 2 economic development personnel. And we have the streets capital improvement transfer, $161,000 over 22. In 22, we had frozen it, and in 23, we're reinstating it and adding a little bit to it based on the GIS tech, which we'll cover in a little bit. 2022 expenditures are projected to be 1.9 million over the original budget, and that is entirely due to the Memorial Park debt payoff of 2.4 million. Excluding the debt payoff, expenditures would be 524,000 under budget. Personnel costs were down about 598,000, which was 10% less than we had expected to spend due to a large number of vacancies across the general fund. For our 2023 expenditures, we have the budget increasing 735,000, which is a 5% increase over the 2022 budget. The total expenditure budget is 14,357,000. And this is just a little illustration of 21 versus 22 versus 23. It's a 5.4% increase. Okay, so some of the significant additions that we have in the 23 budget that make up that amount. We have a 4% COLA in July of 2023. We have 203,000 for merit compensation adjustments. We have 3.5 new positions across the general fund to address increasing activity and wear and tear. And we will cover those on our personnel chart in a few slides here. We have restoration of tools and supplies for public work crews, which is about 115,000 for all of those lines. And we have increase in employee training and memberships of 29,500 across all the departments in general fund. For capital projects, we have 3 replacement vehicles for police, which is 165,000. We have 7 replacement vehicles across public works, which is 312,000. It's 4 F-150s, 2 F-350s, and a vehicle in fleet maintenance for an F-350. We have $35,000 for mobile radios and police, which is 14 mobile radios that are currently out of date. And we have software implementations in planning and finance for timekeeping and permit tracking. The grants fund for 2023, we have $1.35 million of ARPA monies appropriated. $1 million of that is for the Dove project, which is a carryover from the previous year where we have 110,000. We have fire suppression on AVL in the UPass Cultural Center for 325,000 and $20,000 for an IHOP grant match for housing needs assessment. All right, the DDA fund, we didn't have any major changes in this fund. We just have the change in the property tax for the TIF financing, which will be 780,000 projected in 2023, 123,000 for TIF reimbursements, and the total DDA budget will be 727,000. Yep.
Air conditioning for the youth house, was that previous budget this year?
Air conditioning for UPass Culture Center.
We were doing the engineering or the design for that, and that has been removed. The cost is significant, and we didn't think that was, and Cindy might be able to talk better to it, about a priority for there.
Please, thank you.
So we did the engineering on that project and we found that the project came in over budget. So we're using those funds for the AV and lighting portion, some portion of it this year, and then we'll be doing the remaining of that project with the fire suppression next year.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it just was entirely too much money to invest in that building.
It was entirely too much money, more than what we had budgeted for the facility.
Yeah, there's been a number of projects we had proposed last year to use the ARP funds for that, and doing the engineering, like everything else, have been much higher. Like you see the Dove at $1 million. Last year, we had budgeted at 800,000, and getting that done, it's just gone up by that 20%. Hopefully not too much more than that.
So we'll still keep it on the radar.
So it's still on the list,
Okay.
but we figured the other items we had, the other improvements for UPCC warrant a higher priority for this time.
Yeah, and what's nice is we have that engineering already all is completed. So when we finish these other 2 large projects, which also benefit the facility and the users of the facility, then we could possibly move forward with the HVAC.
All right, for our culture and rec fund, we have Parks and Recreation General Fund investment projected for 2023 of 265,000, which is 73.8%. For the Aquatic Center, we have a general fund investment projected at 454,000, which is 56.7%. And the Cultural Center for general fund investment, we have $0. It is projected to be completely self-sufficient in 2023.
That's amazing.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
It is free.
thanks to Cindy and her
Thanks to
staff.
Cindy and Nicole.
You need to call Jeff Baldwin and tell him. He'll be impressed. Just a quick story. Back in the old days, when I was pretty new on staff, Jeff Baldwin was one of our city council members, and we had a finance advisory committee. And he sat on that committee with me and then citizens in the community. And he was always, you'll remember this, Cindy, he was always looking for the recreation operations and the cultural center to be self-sufficient. And I think that it's worth sharing with him, and I'd be happy to do that, what you've accomplished, because it's far above where we were during those discussions. And that being self-sufficient will be cause for a party, I'm sure.
Thank you, Kelly. And I would also encourage you to tell them that we also changed the vision of that facility too. It's not so much a community center anymore, even though it does fulfill the community needs when needed, but it's also an event center and that's where your revenue generator is.
Yeah, I will, Cindy, I'll share with him. He'll be pleased.
Thank you.
All right, moving to lodging tax fund. For 2022, our year-end projection for revenue is 484,000. And we use the same projection for 23 because the growth has just been very difficult to predict in that fund. So for 2023, we're projecting that it will be the same as our year-end revenue for 2022. And our 2023, we have programmed pretty much all of that into the expenditure budget of 484,235, which will be used for those 2 economic development personnel, which comes out to 162,000. It's 1 economic development director and 1 economic development specialist at a half year for the specialist. And then half an FTE for parks labor has been moved from the Memorial Park debt service and reprogrammed to parks and the lodging tax. All right, let's see. For Conservation Trust Fund, there's no change in our projection for revenue. We have $75,000 coming in from lottery proceeds and $75,000 going out to the Culture and Recreation Fund for maintenance of the Woodland Aquatic Center and the UPass Cultural Center. And then we have streets. Capital, do you want to talk about streets? I'm going to turn over to Kip.
Sure. Payment management plan, keeping up with those recommendations as part of the 410 or the streets fund. You can see here the first 4 are Browning, Dual, Pine Ridge, and Lake as far as road projects planned for 23. And then with the payment management plan, it might be the next slide. Yeah, next slide. We also have the just minor street repairs at 80,000, street concrete repairs at 112,000, parking lot improvements at 125. And this is basically slated for the cultural center. It's the last parking lot that hasn't been fixed in the last couple of years. We did not seal coat that parking lot this year because it's in such rough shape, it needs to be overlaid. Street restriping, which we have to do every year at 66,000, sidewalk improvements, and most of this is for the MMOF grant, 825,000, and then vehicle replacement of 75,000. And then lastly, just the stormwater management fund. This is the drainage fees that our residents pay on their utility bill, and it does not generate much for drainage, and that's transferred to the general fund. Yeah, I'll keep up. So switching to the enterprise funds, or 520, or the wastewater fund. Total projected revenues at the end of 22 are 205,000 higher. Due to an increase in sewer tap sales. Tap sales is higher than what we anticipated it to be this year. Moving for next year, you'll see I continue with a conservative estimate for those same tap sales. Budgeting conservatively in 23, revenues are estimated just slightly higher than 22. I'd also like to just caveat that saying we are in water restrictions and sewer bills are based off water usage. And I anticipate to remain in those same restrictions through 23. Sorry, blind here. Expenditures in 22 are projected to be 708 higher than 21 in the fund, but the fund continues to remain healthy and stable. Moving forward to capital projects in wastewater, we have engineering at 60,000 that remain the same as 22. Collection system improvements. The big change here was the $68,000. This is a survey for sonar. So basically a company comes in and uses sound to survey the collection system. So and basically the sound passing through the pipes determines the blockage of the pipe. So less sound, more blockage, if you will, more sound, less blockage. and then we can focus on those problem areas instead of guessing. And also with the asset management program that we're installing, this same data can be implemented straight into that asset management software. Yes, sir.
Kip, is that 68,000 and the survey, all of the system? So
The
you'll have
entire
a
collection
better
system.
picture of the entire system.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So that's the major cost there. Everything else is pretty much O&M with the exception of under improvements for the plants. You'll see 6 bullets down the harmonic filter repair at $56,000. Our harmonic filter basically is what manages the electric current back to Core's grid, and that has failed, and it's quite a significant cost, and we need to actually replace it, not repair it. So it's $56,000 to buy a new one. To repair it, it actually cost more, believe it or not. The parts and the technician was more. So we're gonna repair or replace that. And everything else is O&M with the exception of equipment. At the very last bullet, VACCON replacement or upgrades. Our current VACCON is it's about 12 years old now, and it's about 18 months out to get a new one. We've had significant mechanical issues with it, and this is actually only 35% of the cost of that piece of equipment. So the other 65% will come out of the water fund. So it's split between wastewater and water.
So Kip, you talked about asset management. Where is that in the budget? I didn't see it.
So that was purchased this year.
So that's no more expenses than it for this year.
It's, we'll have an ongoing maintenance cost for that asset management, but that's in your general O&M.
And is that designed to help us keep the memory of where stuff is when we lose staff? Is that the whole intention of that?
Spot on.
And is it across all departments or just yours?
No, it's across the streets, the drainage, the water, and the wastewater.
Okay.
And we're gonna use it for cemetery too, I believe.
And so each day we're kind of dreaming up new ways we might leverage that asset management system, like cemetery, assisting in cemetery management. I know there's also a front end to it that can do tickets, maintenance tickets that will help make everyone's lives a lot easier. So I don't know too much about that, but I'm excited about that. It's a lot of credit to Ben Schmidt and to Kip. It's going to make lives a lot better and service quality a lot better.
And there's no potential to cross over the use of the sonar to see if they can find that bike over at the cemetery?
You don't have an actual ticket manage, an automated ticket management.
No, there's coffee. By the way. There's coffee if anybody wants it.
Switching to the 510 water enterprise, in 2022, revenues are expected to end 512,000 higher. And this is also due to the sale of water taps and metered water sales. Right now, we are tracking about the same as far as total water usage compared 21 to 22, even in water restrictions. So we'll probably have to start honing in a little bit more to maybe get folks to conserve a little bit more as this, I'll say this drought continues. In 23, total revenues are estimated at 140 lower than 22 year-end projections. Again, this is because I will anticipate being in water restrictions and hopefully we can conserve a little bit more water. And in 23, total expenditures are 510 greater than 22. Going through those same expenditures, distribution system improvements. You've seen the first bullet, the water replacement at 250,000. We continue to budget this much due to the supply chain. This year, we were only able to get less than 100 meters and registers and endpoints because they're just simply not available. So we will continue to budget this and move this forward until every meter is replaced. Right now, if I were to guesstimate, we're around 72% changed out. So we're making headway, but very slowly. And then radium removal at $1 million. So I want to touch base on this because this is throughout the budget and it's actually a $3 million project. And this is the first time you're hearing about it. It's been in the budgets for the last 2 years. And we've increased the amount every year because as we learn more, it costs more. Actually, literally yesterday, after our meeting, and I'd already submitted all this, we're going to attempt to do a pilot project at our water treatment plant to remove radium. And the reason we're removing radium, we don't have any violations on radium. It's not an issue. The problem with our radium is we dilute it, so it's not an issue, and we use excess aug water. And that augmentation water is very valuable, and in drought years, you don't have it. So we're trying to remove it so we save that water. So radium removal, right now, I'm estimating just paying $1 million up front and taking out a loan for 2 million. However, what I learned yesterday is we're going to go through a process with our engineer in the state to do a pilot project at our North Wellfield pump house. So back in the day, there was what's called EDB in our water. And we had installed 2 carbon vessels, GAC vessels, granule activated carbon, to remove that EDB. Those haven't even been used in some time. So we're actually going to look at retrofitting those vessels with a radium removal system and put it in place if the state will allow us to remove radium. It'll cost around, don't quote me please, but I'm guessing 25 to 30,000 just to do the paperwork and then make some modifications. And we're going to try to go down that road before we spend a large number. So I do apologize for the large number here, but I think the project is valuable enough to get all of our attention and move forward with this pilot project. And the total cost will be if this pilot is approved, it should be less than $1 million to do it. So
Kip, quick,
instead of 3.
and maybe Michael, you might know, or Kip, on the reservoir engineering, have we made any, I know you can't talk about the product, but have we made any progress in the negotiations on the land that we would be needing?
So right now, negotiations with the land haven't moved forward because we're doing our due diligence on the paperwork in the deed with the property. So we're doing the research with the property to make sure everything's in line before we do those negotiations. No, good questions. And then other things, the second half or the second 65% of the VACCON replacement, there is 373 budgeted for that piece of equipment, like I mentioned in the wastewater fund or the 520 fund. And then, as you mentioned, council member, it's with the reservoir, still try to move forward with that.
All right. For personnel, we do have the 3.5 additional FTEs in the general funds. We have 1 FTE for a GIS data technician, which is going to be used to basically provide all of the GIS data for that asset management system that they were just discussing. And that is going to be cost shared between 410, 420, 510, and 520. But it will actually live in the Public Works Department for the allocation of the personnel allocation. We're going to have 2 economic development positions, 1 the director and 1 the specialist. The specialist is going to be anticipated a half year for July 1st, and then an additional 8 to 10 hours for the permit technicians in the planning office.
So is that where it says that 1.0 FTE economic development specialist, really 0.5?
It is.
Okay.
For 23 it is, and then
Correct.
going forward, it would be 1.
And then this is just the table representation of where those 3.5 positions lie and the change we had from 22 to 23. We did have a couple of moves. We moved the admin assistant from Public Works admin, which was in our Public Works office, to the city manager's office, because that's where the clerk's office, and that's our deputy city manager now. I believe that's our only transfer.
Our deputy city clerk,
Oh, I'm sorry, what did I say?
deputy city manager.
Whoops, sorry about that.
She did not get a promotion.
And then
Bad
in,
news, Suze.
Nonetheless, no.
And then in police, if you'll notice, that did change as well. That is taking positions and downgrading them and then adding an evidence technician, I believe is the title, or support services specialist. And so that's where that change comes from. All right, this debt service slide has changed now based on what Kip just said. We no longer are anticipating the $2 million loan for radium removal at this time. And we do have the Memorial Park COP debt, if approved, to pay off at the end of 2022. All right, and this is the broad summary of all of our funds, how they changed from our 2022 adopted to our 2022 projected. And we do need to update this slide. We did add lodging tax and culture and rec from what is in the budget book right now. So we will provide those updated slides for you at a future point. And then it shows our increase for 23. So for the general fund, we are expecting a 5.4% increase in the expenditure change from 23 to from 22. Grants fund, because of the ARPA expenditures, it's an 11.4% increase. The DDA, just from inflation, that's 1.5%. Culture and rec, an increase of 1.8%. Lodging tax, because of the increased revenues that we've seen this year, is 50.8%. Conservation Trust Fund is down 14.8%, and that's because we had additional fund balance that was spent in 21 and 22, and now it's just going to be the lottery proceeds going in and out. So that's 75,000 in and out, which is a 14.8% reduction. Streets is an increase of 6.9%. Stormwater is 10.9%. Wastewater is 26.5%, and water is 11.2%. And we are going to go into detail now into the fund sheets and the department summaries to look at all the different ads we've had. So we'll do that one second. We're going to do a general overview of our revenues and expenditures for 23. So in general funds, our general fund revenues, we have 82% coming from our taxes, 2% comes from our charges and services, 1% for fines and forfeitures, 4% is our intergovernmental. Investment earnings is very small right now, but hopefully that's going to go up as interest rates increase. We have license and permits is at 1%, miscellaneous at 1%, and transfers in at 9%.
What is the total revenue change from 2022 to 2023, percentage wise?
The total,
I saw a bunch of, you've broken it apart, but what is just the aggregate total?
I
delta?
apologize, I don't have it on that slide. It's so revenues, it's 553,669, 23 over 22.
That's sales. The total.
Oh, for all funds?
Total, all funds coming in
Oh,
versus all the funds from last year.
I don't know if I have that.
What is it? Is it up, down? I assume it's up.
Let me see if I have that.
It should be a percentage, up, down by X amount.
I may have that over here somewhere. No, I don't. Okay, I'll have to get that for you. I don't think I have that in this presentation. Apologize.
Okay, thank you.
And then my question for your taxes, do you break them out into sales tax, property tax, in the different taxes? Do you show?
Absolutely, yes.
You have that.
And that we do have, that's in the budget book.
Yeah, that is in the book.
But the other one is
But
not.
the Total, when it's all averaged out.
Got it. We've got the expenditures, but not the revenues.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we'll get that.
I just wanted to share with the council that I have a message from David, and he is tied up at work. Unfortunately, something came up right at the end of his day. He's not joining us right now, but he will be here for the meeting.
That lucky cuss.
All right, our general fund expenditures. We have an estimated total of 14,357,000. let's see, where do I want to start with this one? So 24% is for police operations, 4% is planning and building, 8% is parks, building and ground, 1% for municipal court, 5% is our interdepartmental and non-departmental expenditures, 16% for general fund and administration, 4% in fleet, 0% for elected officials. That's more like 0.4. 21% for our education support, which is just a pass through for us, 5% debt service, 4% is the transfer out to the culture and rec fund, 5% for streets, and 3% for public works. Oh, so this is our all revenue. We do have the all revenues in here. Not year over year, though. Okay, so we just need to put this into a different. We will get that. Okay, for all fund revenues, we have 24.274 million projected. 59% is general fund, 5% for culture and rec, 11% for water utility, 9% for wastewater, 12% for streets, 1% stormwater, 2% lodging tax, and 1% for grants. And then we have our all fund expenditures, which is 30 million. It is significantly more than the revenues, mainly because of the fund balance we're using for our streets projects. And then also water and wastewater is, I believe it's $3 million more for water. Yeah, it's about 2.5 million for water and about 3 million for streets, makes up that difference. So our all fund expenditures, 46% is general fund, 4.27 for culture and rec, 0.24 for conservation trust, 16.39 for water utilities, 6% for wastewater, 19.66 for streets, 0.52 for stormwater, 1.57 for lodging tax, and 4.58 for grants.
What is the total amount that's coming out of those? We're depleting basically some of our savings accounts.
Yes.
Because that was the thing that was the red light that I saw when I started scanning through it, that the expenditures being so much more than revenue. That's why I was saying, what did we go up percentage wise? Because I saw what we did expenditures wise, and there was a disconnect. That may have just answered my question.
Yes.
But if you could get that delta.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank
We'll break it down by fund, what we increased.
Yeah, for
in the
anybody
total.
that may have looked at the documents too, there was a big, how can we spend that much? We're getting way less. So
Well, some of it's in the capital fund and
No,
streets,
that's
and
right,
which is meant to be spent.
correct,
And also savings for capital in water and wastewater are the biggest ones I see.
correct.
Right, and if that, it's a great question, and I hope it comes up every year that we have something like that. Just because the expenditures are more than the revenues doesn't mean we have an unbalanced budget. We don't deficit spend like the federal government. We're just using our savings. It's still a balanced budget across all funds. So we do not do that deficit spend. So just thank you for the opportunity to add that clarification.
I'll help you out on something for the public. Plus, we're paying off debt. And once you pay it off, it goes down here, but you're still seeing it, and it's coming back up to 21.x. I don't
Yes.
remember the digit, but it's still coming up to a healthy fund balance even after spending. So, okay.
All right, so now that we're done with all the overview, we're going to jump into the department summaries and all of the SLARS service requests that we've had for each department that make up those increases in expenditures that you're seeing in the budget. So we're going to go department by department and cover each of the requests. So for city council, we've increased the travel and training ongoing budget. This was based on attending CML. I believe.
Everybody attending CML.
That makes up $7,600. Meeting and meals, because of all the work sessions and everything else that's been going on, that's an additional $1,500. And then the signature events, as Michael said, is currently in the city council budget for $15,000, and we can move that or do as requested there.
Do you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
At the risk of repeating myself, there's really only one major change in the city manager's office, and that's to bring back that economic development function with the is essentially 1.5 FTE in 2023, 2 FTE going forward. And that again is in the lodging tax fund rather than the general fund.
It's a transfer in, so you will see it in the city manager's budget, but it's a transfer in additional from the lodging tax. For municipal court, this was a fun one. We realized that we had a typo in the 2022 budget. It was supposed to be 29,000, it was 2,900. So we're just correcting what it should have been in the previous year, which is a $30,000 line for the prosecutor. That was my error, and so now we're just correcting it. For finance, the change we have is we have a $12,000 item for a timekeeping and time collection system for the city, which should give us a lot of new automation and time savings for our accounting manager, which will free her up to do some more complex accounting work for us, which would be a huge blessing. So that's what that one is. For information technology, we have a $2,000 ask for a training budget so that our new help desk technician can get certifications in security and some of the other useful trainings that we can have for fraud prevention and hopefully preventing us from having anything that would put us in the news. And then we have an increase for our contract services for the cost of labor for $2,500. For intern non-departmental, we saw a large increase in our contract, $75,000, which is primarily our property casualty insurance and some of our other contracts for cleaning and a few other ones. We also had an ADA requirement. So we need to purchase a software called AudioEye for $3,800 so that we can be compliant for the budget documents and our website. And then we also consolidated the city attorney from having their own department line to just putting it directly into interdepartmental as one line. For police, we have 3 vehicles, $165,000 for 3 patrol vehicle replacements. We have in-car mobile radios, which is those 14 radios that are out of date that need to be replaced for $35,000. We have a NetMotion subscription, which is basically a VPN for the police department to be able to have access to all the information they need while they're in their vehicles for $3,000. And then we have CGIS software, which I believe was just a contract increase, I believe, for $1,500. For planning and building, we have an increase in the hours for our part-time personnel, which is $25,000 or almost $26,000. We have a permit tracking software for $12,000 and an increase in training and membership dues for $2,500. Okay, Public Works. Public Works, we have 6 vehicle requests. 4 of those are from carryovers from 2022. It's 4 F-150s and 2 F-350s that make up $312,000. We have 1 vehicle in fleet, which is $55,000. I believe that's also an F-350. Is that correct? Yes. We have message boards. We have 1 new message board and 1 message board that's being repaired, which is the cost of $31,000. Cloud blades for $10,000, chainsaws for $3,000, and that GIS technician for $56,000, which is a transfer in from the other funds. Okay, Culture and Rec, they have a few smaller items for stand-up desks, reservation signage, several items for the Aquatic Center. We do have maintenance for the Aquatic Center. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? The maintenance for the Aquatic Center line for the windows. Oh, or Cindy, yeah.
Thank you. So recently, we have been experiencing some windows that are cracking at the Aquatic Center due to the facility settling. And I believe that we have determined that the safety glass windows that were supposed to be put in there were not actually put in there. So the maintenance on the windows is at $7,200 for 2023 with the opportunity in case there's more windows that crack that we can replace those as well. This could be an ongoing situation until we get all the windows replaced, but we're just gonna replace them as need be.
Are you saying the windows were supposed to be safety glass and they're not?
There was supposed to be a certain kind of glass that were put in there, and I don't have that specific name for you, but that is not the glass that's actually in the facility. And the reason why, I don't know that it was in the plans, but the company that we're going with to replace our window indicated that when you have windows as like your storefront, you need to have those as more safety type windows than standard.
Then we have just safety PPE membership dues, which we did a SLAR for the entire general fund for the city because of the need to increase our membership and training budget since it hadn't been increased in prior years. We have permits and licensing ongoing for 1,300, travel and training for 1,500, and then an equipment table and water fountain one time for $8,700. All right, and I will turn it over to Kip to go over wastewater and water.
Right. You've seen a lot of these already. The harmonic filter we talked about, a lot of these are already in the plant improvement section of the summary. So I can answer any questions. The sonar is on here. We have compost air piping temperature probes. That's typical every year. We need to replace those. It's kind of your general O&M for the year for the plant. At the bottom, I'll just mention the CIP loader replacement. One time every year we spend $20,000 and we get a new loader. So it's a great program we're part of. We have 2 loaders out there and they switch every year. So we get one for 2 years and it's gone and it's under warranty. They do the service. It's quite a, I'll say, awesome program. Any questions on wastewater?
Where's the fence going?
The fence is actually on, the fence has been there since 1992 and it's not on our property. So the property changed hands. They brought it to our attention based on their survey and we need to relocate the fence so it's on our property. Moving to water, and we discussed all these as well. So I can, the meter replacement, radium removal, we talked about turbidity meters, so one time 15,000. Our turbidity meters are original to the plant from the 90s, and we're starting to experience a lot of O&M on those, so we're looking at replacing those. The VACCON is in there for 575. 65% only comes out of the water fund, and then the reservoir. Any questions on water? Turbidity meter?
Yes.
So, yep.
Cloudy.
You had to spell that for me like 3 times so we can get. Very important. All right, for grants, we did go over these as well. It's 1.35 million in the ARPA money that's being appropriated for next year. And it is those 3 items, the Dove Station, it's fire suppression and AVL and UPass Cultural Center and the IHOP grant match. It is. Yeah. They build the best houses.
Just Aaron, just with the syrup on that, can you go back? I thought it was 700,000 that we had yet to spend and you got 1.35. Did I miss something there? On your page 5 of your intro, you say there's 700 in ARPA funds remain unspent. And you got 1.35 there.
Where is it?
Page 5 of his the budget message.
Oh. That was what was originally budgeted. Yeah, this needs to be, we'll get this updated. There is actually. Let me find the page. Okay, at the end of 2022, we have 1.4 million remaining. It's 1410206. And we're appropriating 1,349,703. So we project there'll be 60,000 remaining at the end of 2023. And we'll get that slide updated. Thank you.
And we spent 550 this year,
We spent
more or less.
504,000 at the end of this year. Yeah, they weren't able to get a few of the projects done, and then when the HVAC came back higher, they put that on hold, and then we're gonna move the fire suppression and AVL to next year.
Okay.
Let me make a note. All right, for DDA, again, there was no material changes to their request. They didn't increase any of their expenditure lines. It's only the expected TIF that we're going to get and then the TIF reimbursements that change, plus the inflation that we have. So the ending fund balance we have as 1,650,000. They have non-spendable land on the books that's included in that amount for 1,060,000. And so the unrestricted amount of that ending fund balance is 590,000. Just to clarify that.
So when this property deal goes through for them, where's that going to show up on their budget?
When that goes through, we're gonna have to do a book adjustment on the amount that we're holding that land on our books. So their fund balance will go down slightly, and then the 800,000 will go in to their fund balance.
But doesn't it also then trigger it being repaying the city for the debt?
I believe so.
So then you'll have that as a surplus somewhere next year.
Yeah, we kind of debated on whether to include that in the 23 budget, but there's too many questions still out there before we wanted to incorporate that in here. So that might be something if we get it, we do a supplemental for in the middle of 23, or we'll just hold it in a bank account, appropriate it in 24. There's no shortage of need, so hopefully you'll see it if everything goes according to plan for DDA. You'll see it sometime next year. Just not quite comfortable yet.
You don't get any money till it actually closes and they sign on the dotted line.
Correct.
What basis of accounting is that? The don't count the chickens basis of accounting.
That's awesome. Lodging tax, we have already covered. If you have any questions on this, but the expenditure budget is currently set at 484,235. And it is for those 2 economic development positions and the additional half FTE being moved from the Memorial Park debt service of 50,000 to the facilities and grounds personnel labor. And Conservation Trust Fund, there was no change from the prior year. It's $75,000 coming in from the lottery proceeds and $75,000 going out to the Aquatic Center and UPass Cultural Center. And these are the same figures that we saw before for streets. Were there any questions on these? Good. And stormwater, we have $2,400 in drainage improvements and then $161,675 transfer to the general fund. The $13,725 increase is the proportional transfer for the GIS technician for the new permit software. Okay, so that was all the department sheets. Now we'll go over an introduction to the 5-year plan, and then Kip is going to go over our CIP items. So why a 5-year plan? What's the benefit of it? So it's recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association, and it's because it provides a greater insight into the city's financial capabilities to meet our current and our long-term financial debt, so that when you're making decisions on what we should include in the budget, how is that going to affect our future years? Is it going to put us into the red or black in the future, or are we able to actually continue moving forward with those decisions? So that's really the biggest reason for it. The 5-year plan that's been put together here is the current year and then through 2027. So when we look at the general fund, Wait a minute, I'm missing, oh, here it is. I'm gonna start with the assumptions. So the assumptions that we used in the 5-year plan to build it out. In 2023, we used a growth rate of 3%. And then it's 2.5% every year moving forward. After that, we used a conservative growth rate there. For property tax, you're going to see a difference between our non-assessment years and our assessment years. So 2023 is a non-assessment, we're using a 3% increase. And then in an assessment year, we're using a 6% increase. And that's pretty much the industry standard. When I looked across at our peers, what were they doing? They were using somewhere between a 3 to 4% in non-assessment and like a 6 to 10% in assessment, depending on what municipality we were looking at. So I did feel that was a pretty conservative rate to use. For inflation, we used 2.5% in 23, and then 2% going forward. For health insurance, we used 8% as an increased percentage. It doesn't mean it's going to be absorbed by the city or not, but that's what I'm using as an assumption, that health insurance would go up each year and just the overall cost of it. Utilities, a 4% increase. The insurance for property, casual, workers' comp insurance, 8% for every year. Cost of living, 3%. Retirement, we're assuming 8% for our sworn personnel and 5% for our general. So these are the assumptions used to build out the projections for general fund and across all of our funds.
What's gonna happen when you've got property tax, which actually goes up significantly more than that?
I have some decisions to make. That's, yeah.
Well, you projected it very conservatively, but we already know for 2024, it's gonna be significantly more than that.
Right, and that's something we will have a lot more conversation about in the coming months, is that reassessment and what that will yield in terms of property tax. That wasn't really reflected here. There's been several conversations just informally among you all, among the county and some of the other taxing jurisdictions here about, is there some kind of relief or some kind of way to hedge the amount of growth on that. And that seems to be a pretty popular notion so far. And so this is something we'll talk about a little bit more, but again, being on the very, very conservative side here, obviously, knowing that conversation is coming, that's why we went with a more inline number here for the time being.
That's a great question, though. So based on those assumptions, this is how the general fund is anticipated to look from 23 through 27. We see our 23 is already built out for you here with revenues of 14,368,000 and expenditures of 14,357,000, which gives us revenue over expenditures of 10,700. Next year, we see our revenues grow to 14,800,000. Which is a $37,000 revenue over expenditure. And we see that it continues to go up in 25 and 26. The reason in 27 that even though our revenues are going up, we don't see the same increase is because the DDA loan would be paid off in that year. And obviously that's going to change if they sell the property and they pay the loan off early, but that's the reason why it doesn't continue to go up even higher than that. All right, and this is just an explanation of what makes up those numbers, how our taxes would grow, license and permits across the board, just based on those growth assumptions that we were using. This is what makes up the totals in that previous page. Any questions on these? Or further explanation? And then this is how the expenditures would look based on those inflation rates and the utility assumptions and other increases we've had. All right, and then this is how the 5-year expenditures will look for all funds. If you notice in 23, it's a very large number of the 31,340,000 compared to the other years. The reason it's so much higher is because we're using fund balance to pay off in 23 from projects that were prior. If those projects don't get done for some of the same reasons of supply chain and other things, then you may see 24 or 25 increase based on those needs that need to be done that just haven't been completed yet. because there's a few items in water, I believe the reservoir and a few other large items that may roll into future years. So that's the reason why it's so much larger in 23 than the future years. And this is just a graph to show what it looks like with all the funds. Just me having fun. All right, with that, go ahead. Simmer, I know. With that, I'm going to turn over to Kip so he can go over the CIP plan for the next 5 years.
The good stuff. This graph basically just shows what's being attempted to be spent in the next 5 years, based breakdown by funds. And I'll get into the detail of those in future spreadsheets. So, okay, cut it off. That's right. So this slide basically shows you everything that you've already seen in the current budget and based on the funds. So you can see the public works vehicles all the way down to the radium removal system and the turbidity meters we discussed. So there's nothing new on this slide.
Kip, is the Dove actually a general fund item?
No, that's a grant. It's in the grants.
It's a
fund.
grant.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, though. I looked at that too. I'm like, that's not, no, it's under grants. Okay,
And it's a governmental type fund expense and not enterprise fund?
well, it's the ARPA money, which could be used on water infrastructure.
Okay. But you won't be purchasing and accounting for it in those funds. I'm just curious. It will be grants. And you're going to capitalize that asset there?
Yeah, and
Okay.
then the maintenance though will be out of water, so we'll have to.
Okay. Just curious.
Moving forward from there, the reservoir you can see in the 510 fund, which we've already discussed. All these items here in the 520 fund for 23 as well, which we've discussed. Next slide. Here's some photos of some of the vehicles that were replaced. These are police department vehicles. They're non-really response vehicles as far as patrol. Here are some of the vehicles, the F-250 and 350 in the fleet in the facilities departments. The one on the left is a 1997 Beauty and it's treated us very well.
It's vintage.
It is. Actually, we like it. It's just really old. Here are a couple of the Colorados. So these were most of the Colorados that were supposed to be replaced this year. We missed the window for the state bid. It was open for about 12 hours and then it closed. So it was that quick. What we learned just today, even with the F-250s and 350s, though the bid is now opening at the end of the year. So even if we do place a bid, it won't come until 23. And that window is only going to be 3 days. So November 7th through the 10th. And then also the cost of those vehicles increased. We had budgeted 55 or 65 and they're up to $77,000 now. Everything's going up and it just takes longer to get it. Next slide. Here's some more command vehicles for the police department that are due for replacement. I don't know if the chief wanted to comment on any of those vehicles, but he's more than welcome to.
Are those vehicles new or are they the ones we tried to replace last year?
These have been on the replacement for quite a while.
Okay.
These three SUVs.
Okay.
Okay, here's moving forward in the general fund with just vehicles. And then further down on the spreadsheet, you can see more capital improvements as far as roof replacements or repairs. And so we had looked out for the next 3 years, basically on what it's going to cost to replace vehicles if we can and what that cost is. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, that's basically roof improvements that need to be made at City Hall. Everybody notices the water stains over by the trees. Those drains are leaking. We need to replace all those. The cabin, the old stagecoach, which is way down by Walmart, believe it or not, belongs to the city. We need to do some repairs on that, and so on and so forth. Historical buildings and other things that need to be maintained that haven't over the years. Moving on, Meadowwood Senior Center, and those roofs, and then the streets plan for the next few years and the dollar amounts associated with the streets improvements. I don't have the specific details of what streets those actually are or what treatments, but you can see the chip seal and crack seal varying for various years there in regards to the pavement management plan, as well as moving forward with continuing with the assessment of our roads. So we have just over $30,000 budgeted for the next 4 years, each year, to do basically that assessment of not the entire city, just portions of the city to stay current with that assessment. Next slide.
What's the cemetery expansion?
Yeah, I just saw that too.
400 grand on that. Where are we at in that process? Last time they surveyed it last budget, and what are we doing this time?
So currently Ben has been working through that in regards to getting a design for the road network and the drainage for that and how that's going to look. So he's put together a scope and he's asked for bids on what that design is going to, or what the cost of that design is going to look like.
So this is going to be the actual doing of the work?
So the 400,000 is for the actual construction of it, not the design.
Not the design.
Right.
Design's already allocated?
Yeah, we
Yes.
haven't allocated for it this year.
It's already appropriated and yeah, we're getting bids.
Moving on from there, obviously more street repairs, restriping, sidewalk improvements. We're trying to continue to stay current with ADA requirements and what we've budgeted to continue improving our sidewalks. I will tell you, you'd be surprised how many of these get hit and damaged on a daily. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So that sums up the 410 fund. Moving forward, you'll see the 510 fund or the water fund, golf course wells 1 and 2, some vehicles, North Wellfield upgrades, also Trout Creek surface diversion install. And you see all of these when I present the reconciliation to you every year. You see all of this in there. So that's already been done for you. And I can answer any questions you have on any of these items, but you'll see these multiple times throughout the year. Okay, and then let's see. Moving to the 520 fund. And what's proposed is just basically O&M on the plant. If you all recall, the plant was expanded and upgraded in 2017 and is doing very well. This is just maintaining that plant at this point. We don't anticipate any expansion. That plant was designed for a full build out unless council decides to go get more water and build more things. We will have to look at expanding the plant once we've reached closer to our capacity. Right now, the capacity of the plant is right around 56% in both hydraulic and organic loading. So we should be okay right there. Yep.
All right, and that's the end of the budget presentation.
Thank you, everyone. It looks great. I really appreciate the plans that you put together. It makes it easy to talk about things going forward. Council, do you have anything you'd like to talk with staff about or discuss? Questions?
I have some minor ones, but we can do it in a one-on-one. It's nothing major.
Anyone else have any comments or questions at this point? We'll have plenty of opportunities going through the process. This is just the initial presentation. According to statute, the staff is obligated to provide a draft, or the manager and our charter, it's obligated to provide a draft budget to us by the 15th of October. So he did have it to us last Friday. And so we were in compliance with those requirements. And so we'll start the process of the budget. And I believe the document's online. So on page 5 of the document is a budget calendar, and I believe the city manager is going to share that with us during our regular meeting. So you can kind of see all of the different opportunities and getting to where we are today. So our presentation is today, and then we have a workshop and work session on November 3rd for the audience that's here now. And if we need more, we can schedule other work sessions in order to get to the initial posting of the appropriation ordinance and then the public hearing and adoption in December. So reference this calendar, and if we need additional work, we just need to communicate that with staff. Anything else, Michael, you'd like to share?
No, we appreciate that, Mayor Pro Tem. Obviously, we have a few minutes here if there's no additional questions. I know we're down 2 council members. If there's any additional questions you'd like to have us prepare to answer for that November 3rd date, you can certainly let us know. I got a couple of questions here. The year-over-year revenue change for all funds. We'll also update that number on what it was actually remaining for the ARPA funds. But if there's anything else in the interim prior to November 3rd, we're happy to address that and get that out to you via email, or we can answer it at that date as well.
Council, since we are finished at 6:20 and our meeting doesn't start until 7, I'm aware that there is one person in the audience that would like to comment to
Oh,
the
Mayor.
council. Would you like? Yes.
She was going to talk at the 7 o'clock meeting.
Okay, never mind.
Thank
then.
you.
You're welcome. I thought we had someone wanting to address the council. So I think it's more if it has something to do with something in the meeting or on the agenda, it does not. I think it's probably more appropriate in the meeting for items not on the agenda, if you don't mind. Thank you. And David's not here either, so he will be here. So without it,
Is it on the budget?
Is it a budget question?
No, then no.
But that's your workshop, and so on your agenda for tonight, just quickly,
if you'd like to,
or I can wait till we close the time.
It's not on.
Well, if you want it on the record, this is a workshop on the budget.
yeah. Why don't we have a report from the city manager, item 3B on the agenda, which relates to the budget message for 23, if that would be an appropriate time for you.
On the budget.
I think her question is not pertaining to the budget.
Oh, okay. Then
That's
we'll
why
wait
it's
for the meeting.
appropriate for later.
Thank you. So should we, anything else? Should we just take an adjournment and then reconvene at 7?
Hey, Robert, can you log on really quick?
I can.
This way then I got
All right.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. This work session will end at this point, and we'll see you at 7.